Hey y'all, it's been a while since I've recorded. I'm sorry. I'm going to do 9 and 10, hopefully 11 and 12 today. I'll see how long it takes to get through these chapters. We left off on chapters 7 and 8. Moon is in the jail, remember? The constable Sanders took him there, and we learned a little bit about Sanders' attitude, his reputation, and Moon is in the jail. And what strikes me as odd is that Moon is liking it there. One of the main reasons is that he's got a bed to sleep in, he's got food, and he's got shelter. He also took a shower. Remember, he's never had a warm shower, so he's liking it there. We're gonna start here where you need to think about what's gonna happen to Moon. He's not gonna be able to stay in this jail forever. He's gonna have to eventually go to the boys' home. So we've got to see what's gonna happen with him going now from the jail to the boys' home. All right, I'm gonna get started. Chapter 9. The next morning, another policeman brought me bacon and eggs and a biscuit for breakfast. Obregon said I ate it all like a wild dog. I told him it was the best breakfast I ever had. Not long after I finished, I heard Sanders talking about me beyond the door. So there's Sanders. "Where's that little turd?" "He's back there," someone on the other side of the door said. "He's not too upset about it either." "No, he's been eating up everything we bring him. He and Obregon are good buddies now." I heard Sanders grunt, and then footsteps came toward the door. He came into the room and looked around until he saw me in my cage. "You ready, boy?" "Where we're going?" "Taking you to Tuscaloosa. Gonna reintroduce you to your old friend, Mr. Gene. Get up." Now I'm gonna stop there. I want you to remember who Mr. Gene is. Remember back when he was in Mr. Wellington's cabin, and the man that got him, remember what he did to Mr. Gene so he could escape? Remember how he threw up? Mr. Gene pulled over, he threw up, and then wham, hit Mr. Gene and ran. So that's Mr. Gene. He's about to go to the boys' home with him. I set my jaw and shook my head. "Don't you shake your head at me, boy." I went back to the back of my cage and sat in the corner. I drew my knees up to my chest and hugged them there like a possum. Sanders reached to his belt and pulled away a set of keys. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. I said, "Get up." That child can't be more than 10 years old, Sanders," Obregon said. "He got you jumpy?" "Shut up, Obregon." Sanders put the key back on his belt and unsnapped a leather case that held a pair of handcuffs. "Hold out your hands, boy." "What's your problem, Sanders?" I quickly pulled my hands away from my knees and sat on them. "This ain't none of your dang business," Sanders said to Obregon. "Don't tell me you gotta handcuff him." Sanders turned around and looked at Obregon. "I thought I told you to shut up." Obregon smiled. "I bet you used to have bullies on you like wild dogs on meat when you were in school. Never mind, I forgot. You didn't make it past the 8th grade, did you, Sanders?" Sanders ignored Obregon. "Get up," he said to me. I shook my head. "Now," Sanders yelled. I didn't move. Sanders reached down and grabbed me by the back of my shirt. He lifted me, still balled up, but with my arms around my knees again. Obregon stood in his cell and clung to the bars. "You hurt him, and I've seen it all," he said. Do you know what he means right there? You hurt him, and I've seen it all. If you hurt him, I'm going to tell, is what Obregon's saying. So Obregon's trying to protect Moon. I smiled at Obregon. It doesn't hurt, I said. At least put some shoes and a jacket on the kid, Obregon called after us. Sanders carried me out of the cage, through the main office, and outside. He opened his car and tossed me in the back like I was nothing but a sack of coon hides. He slammed the door behind me and went back inside. When Sanders returned, I'd come out of my ball and was sitting up in the normal way. He glanced at me once and then got into the driver's seat and started the engine. I knocked on the plastic shield between us, but he acted like he didn't hear me. "Sanders," I said. No answer. He pulled onto the road and sped up. "Sanders," I said again. "What?" "Where are we?" "First of all, it's Constable Sanders to you, and we're in Livingston." Suddenly, the window beside me slid down a few inches, and the cold air came rushing through and blew against my face. "Is it a little chilly back there?" Sanders said as he chuckled to himself. It's January, so it's like cold weather." Sanders thinks that he's kind of not torturing, but he's making Moon uncomfortable by rolling down the window because it's cold outside. So he's laughing to himself. I didn't say anything. I wanted the window down to keep me from getting sick again. As I watched the countryside pass by, I thought about escape. But I'd not been farther than Mr. Abrascotto's store that I remembered, and I knew we weren't anywhere close to that. I reasoned that even if I could get out of the car, I wouldn't know where to go, and I wouldn't have any of my supplies. "When do I get my things back?" "You'll get 'em when we're good and ready. Everything except the rifle and bullets you were toting." I felt my face grow warm. "You can't take my rifle," I shouted. "Pap gave me that rifle." Sanders seemed to like it, that I was getting upset. He shook his head and smiled. I slammed my fist into the plastic shield. "Hey," he yelled. He looked in his rearview mirror at me. He wasn't smiling anymore. "You scratch up my new patrol car and we're going to have a go at it. I spent 2 hours cleaning your stink out of it last night." I sat back and looked down at my knees. We drove along without talking for a long time. I thought again of ways to escape, but the situation seemed hopeless. After a while, Sanders pulled over at a gas station and filled the car. When he came back from paying, he was popping a flat round can against his thumb, kind of like this. He got into the car and opened the container by cutting it with his teeth. "What's that?" "Copenhagen chewing tobacco. Now shut up." "I gotta pee." "Hold it. You ain't getting out of this car." He put some of the tobacco between his front lip and his gum and flicked his fingers at the floor. He closed the door and started the engine. As we pulled onto the highway, I watched him move his lip around and spit into an RC Cola can. He caught me staring. "I can't help but think I'll be seeing you in and out of jail all your life, kid." I looked away and didn't answer him. "You ain't nothing but white trash." "You're worse than white trash. You ain't even trailer trash. You know what you are." I shook my head against the car window, still watching the fields pass by. "You're stinking militia trash. You're stinking militia trash is what you are." I didn't know that word, militia. I kept staring out the window while he talked to me. He spat into the can and then scraped it against his chin to catch some dribble. He spat again. "Your daddy ain't never owned a thing in his life. He trespassed and poached for a living. Some dirty lowlife you'd see walking down the highway with animal furs wrapped around him." "You don't know my pap." "The heck I don't. I've seen him." I felt my face go hot again and balled my fist onto my knees. I knew there wasn't anything I could do, so I stayed quiet. "You'd have never been nothing, boy. That man didn't care a lick about you." Now think about what it's going to make him feel like. That man didn't care a lick about you. You remember what Moon did when Mr. Abrascato was talking about his daddy, and he wasn't talking nearly as bad as Mr. Sanders. I couldn't hold the anger any longer. I slammed both my fists into the plastic shield and shouted at him, "I got another gun, you know? I've still got Paps hidden away with some bullets. You'll be lucky if I don't shoot you dead." "Here we go," he said. Sanders veered off the road and skidded to a halt. He racked the gear shift into place and flung the car door open. I crouched on the seat like a frog. Now think about that. He's crouching like a frog. What is he getting ready to do? What do frogs do? When he opened my door, I jumped at him. He didn't expect me to come at him like I did. By the time his hand stretched out to grab me where I would have been on the seat, I was already clinging to him with my legs wrapped around his stomach and my arms under his armpits. I bit into his shoulder and chewed at it like it was a tough piece of gristle. Gristle's like, you know, if you're eating steak and there's like this hard piece of it, that's the gristle. That's like, you have to chew hard. Sanders started yelling and backed away from the car while I worked in 3 or 4 more chews. He grabbed me around the waist with both hands and squeezed so hard that my body shot with pain, and I had to throw my head back and cough at the sky. I felt my pants grow wet with pee flowing down my leg. Remember, he had to go to the bathroom already, and when he squeezed him, he couldn't hold it any longer. "Dang it," he yelled. "How about this? You feeling this?" I tried to nod so that he would stop, but I couldn't. "I ain't the man to mess with, boy. My family's owned the land in Sumter County for 100 years. You wouldn't know anything about owning stuff, now would you?" I coughed again and my eyes felt like they were about to burst. He squeezed me harder. "Would you?" Everything I saw was blurry. A truck whooshed by. I heard the dinging of the police car where the door was still open. Suddenly, he released me and dropped me to the asphalt, and I heard him spit and walk away. I rolled over and got sick on the ground. I hoped he'd let me lie there until I felt better. I wanted to stay until it became dark out and I heard owls calling. I laid there for what seemed like a long time, staring at the loose gravel, until he grabbed me by the shirt and lifted me and threw me back into the police car. He said something to me, but I couldn't make it out. I laid across the back seat, taking deep breaths and waiting for the pain to go away. I felt the gentle motion of the cruiser through the vinyl. It wasn't long before the car slowed down and I heard tires on a gravel road. "I want you to pay attention to something," Sanders said. The car stopped, and I saw Sanders' window going down. "Billy," he yelled, "go tell your daddy to get out here." I heard a screen door slam somewhere outside. Sanders began to pack his Copenhagen with dull thumps against his thigh. "I'm going to show you what it's like to own things, boy." He turned and looked at me and shoved another pinch of tobacco in his mouth. I watched his face as he stared at me and worked that tobacco around with his tongue. Then I heard another man's voice outside. "How you doing, Davy?" the man said. Sanders turned away from me and peered out the window. "What'd I tell you last month, Allen?" "Davy, you know how things have been around here. I talked to your daddy about it. He said we could get settled with you in 2 weeks. I got my disability coming." That means like a check coming. Some money coming. Sanders shook his head and stared straight out over the steering wheel. "Allen, lean in here," he said calmly. I heard footsteps outside the car. "Come here," Sanders said again. "I want to tell you something." "Well, I can hear fine from right here, Davy." "Lean in here. There's no sense in little Billy hearing this." I heard the footsteps again and saw the man's head appear at the window and his hands rest on the driver's door. His face was long and sunken in and smudge-streaked. He reminded me of a blue heron. It's like a bird. He swallowed, and I saw his Adam's apple. Men's Adam's apples stick out. It's like that lump. So he saw it move when he swallowed. It goes up and down. Sanders suddenly let go of the steering wheel and backhanded the man across the jaw. Backhanded. This is the back of your hand, right? Backhanded. Backhanded the man across the jaw. It happened so fast I jumped in my seat. The man's face was knocked around as if he looked away to stare at the back tire. He slowly wiped his mouth and continued looking downward. My granddaddy didn't leave this land to my daddy, did he? The man didn't answer. His face was beet red. Did he? Sanders repeated. No, he didn't. See what you can do then. I know plenty of people that would love to take over this house you built on my property. Sanders rolled up his window and began to drive forward. The man's hand slipped away from the car and his face passed by my window. He never looked up. Now that's white trash, Sanders said. So that gives you a little idea of Sanders and his lack of respect for people. Chapter 10. When we got to the boys' home, there were people in the driveway with cameras to take pictures of us. Sanders opened the back door and the people crowded close and shouted questions, but my chest and head hurt too much to answer. I balled up on the back seat. Where's your daddy, kid? How long have you lived in that cave? We heard you buried your father. Tell us about it. Sanders grabbed me under the armpit and lifted me on my tiptoes. He leaned down close to my ear. You screw up, kid, I'll squeeze you till your head pops off. I watched the sidewalk pass under my feet while Sanders pulled me along. Cameras flashed and people yelled at me. Officer, can he talk? Has he been educated at all? I heard Sanders reply. He's a little militia kid. He don't know much of anything. Militia. I want you guys to try to look up militia on your phone. Like, go to Google. Look up militia. Here's how you spell it. M-I-L-I-T-I-A. Militia. I want you to look it up, okay? See what militia means. So that's what Sanders says he is a militia kid. He don't know much of anything. Does your daddy ever kill anybody, kid? Does he have any relatives? Hey, kid. Is it true you lived in a tree? We were soon inside the boys' home, and the flash bulbs and the shouting of reporters faded away behind the front door. Sanders stopped, and my eyes saw the tips of his shoes in front of me. The tips of shoes in front of me. I looked up to see Mr. Gene. Moon? He said. I didn't reply. You best get some restraints on this boy before I let him loose, Sanders said. I don't think he's going anywhere, Mr. Gene replied. Unless he knows how to buzz that front door open, he can bounce off these walls all day long. Sanders released me, and I dropped to the floor. He's all yours then. This kid's an animal. He peed in his pants, and I got to clean my back seat of him for the second time. I tried to rub my shoulder where Sanders had been squeezing me, but the constable slapped my hand away. Don't you move a finger, he spat. Sanders looked back at Mr. Gene. I'm telling you now, this kid'll be on you like a wet cat if you don't tie him down. My stomach felt queasy, and my head was still throbbing. I wanted to lie down and sleep. I'm not going to whip up on anybody, I said to the floor. Sanders left, and Mr. Gene took me to a back room and stood me in front of a giant black man. This is Mr. Carter, he said. He's the watchman here at Pinson. He'll take you from here. Now, we learned another thing. We learned a new character, Mr. Carter. And what he is kind of like a guard. He's the guy that's in charge under Mr. Gene. Okay? And we also know now the name of the boys' home, and it's called Pinson. Pinson. My stomach hurts, I said. I bet it does, Mr. Gene said, like he didn't believe me. I know all about that stomach. We've seen just about every trick in the book at Pinson. Isn't that right, Mr. Carter? That's right. Mr. Carter, will you get this boy a uniform and show him to the shower room? After that, you can show him to his bunk. Mr. Carter nodded and began to lead me away. And Mr. Carter, Mr. Gene said. We stopped and turned around again. Moon will be wearing our special color for the time being. I'll fix him up, Mr. Carter said. Mr. Carter pointed me through a door on my right, and then we turned left down a hall. Soon we came to a closet where we stopped. He opened the door, and from a top shelf he got a one-piece uniform that was the color of an orange flagging tape. That means like bright, bright orange. He handed it down to me. You don't give us any trouble, and we'll let you wear a white one. What size shoes do you want? I don't know. He knelt down and dug into a cardboard box and pulled out some white canvas tennis shoes. That means like, canvas means like the material of Vans. That material, that's canvas. So they're just white shoes like that. Take these with you and we'll swap them out if they don't fit. I'll round up a jacket for you and put it in your locker later on. Now, that right there gives you kind of an idea of Mr. Carter's attitude. He's not a mean guy. He's a nice guy. I took the shoes and backed up as he came from the closet and shut it. We continued on till we came to a steel door that Mr. Carter had to unlock with keys that hung from his belt. Once we passed through, I heard the sound of boys shouting. He locked the door behind us, and we turned right and kept walking. You have boys in cages here? Cages? Like jail? No cages like jail. We turned left again and walked down another hall until Mr. Carter pushed open a door and motioned for me to go in. Get a shower and get dressed. There's towels above the sink in there. I'll be out here when you're done. Have you had lunch yet? No, sir. The rest of the boys already ate, but I'll see what I can find for you. I walked into the empty shower room and looked around. I saw the stall and remembered how Earl had turned on the silver knobs to get the water out. After placing my new clothes on the floor, I stripped down and stepped under the shower head. I watched the nozzle as I turned the knob, and suddenly icy cold water pounded on my face. I sucked in my breath. You know how ice cold water makes you. I sucked in my breath and let the water run over me for a few seconds before I reached up and just turned it off. When Mr. Carter came back, I was waiting in the middle of the floor with my new uniform and shoes on. He gave me a sandwich and bent over and picked up the clothes Earl had found for me. When we walked back out into the hall, he tossed my jail clothes into a trash can and he wiped his hands on his pants. The next room he took me to was full of numbered bunk beds, each one with 2 lockers next to it. Now you should be picturing this in your head, okay? Try to visualize that. It's a room full of bunk beds, and by each bed, there's some little lockers. There was a door against the far wall that led outside to a play yard with trailers in it. There was another to my right that I reasoned would open back into the shower room. Out the windows, I saw boys running about and playing. We got 21 residents here. Residents? Residents means like people that reside, people that live there. Okay, so 21 boys live there. So chances are you're going to find a friend. It ain't so bad if you follow the rules. I nodded. Do you know how to read, kid? I nodded again. Then go find bed 18. That's going to be your home for a while. He walked out, and I wandered along until I found bed 18. It was a top bunk, so I crawled up into it and unwrapped my sandwich. I chewed it slowly, and I watched the boys. I was hungry, but it wasn't long before the loneliness started creeping up over me again, and I wrapped what was left of the sandwich and laid down to sleep. Mr. Carter came back into the room after about an hour. He shook my shoulder, and pain shot down my arm, and I leaped back. Is something wrong with your arm, kid? Sanders. He squeezed it, I said. Let me see. I sat up, unzipped my uniform, and pulled it to my waist. He studied my shoulder for a moment. He then reached out and touched the blue areas with his fingers. Where he pressed, the skin turned red and then blue when he pulled his fingers away. He shook his head. That's Sanders. He's trouble. I got some cousins in Sumter County that say he ain't easy to deal with. You want some ice to put on it? No, sir, I'm okay. Mr. Carter watched me while I zipped it up again. Boy, you built like a squirrel. Pap said I could climb like one too. I bet you could. I ain't seen many white boys with muscles like that. So what he's saying is he's built like a squirrel, like tiny but strong, muscular. It's from working. He picked up the sandwich I hadn't finished. It must not be from eating. I'll finish it later, I said. He tossed it a few feet into the trash can. No, that's all right. We got supper coming pretty soon. You'll get all you can eat then. He leaned against the bunk behind me and stuck his hand in his pockets. You're all over TV, you know. I shrugged. They say you as mean as a snake, but you don't look too mean to me. I laid back down on the bed and pulled the blanket up to my chin. People keep trying to catch me all the time, and I hadn't done anything. Before my pap died, he told me to head to Alaska. He said there were more people like us up there. More squirrely people with long hair? No, sir. More people that hate the government. Mr. Carter smiled and nodded. Government haters. That's right. All those government haters up there. Yeah, that's what he said. How are you going to get to Alaska? Walk, I guess? Mr. Carter laughed. You ain't off to such a good start. Soon as I get out of here, I will be. Mr. Carter smiled and shook his head. You don't get it, do you? They ain't gonna let you out of here unless somebody comes for you. I figure I won't have much of a problem busting out of here once I get to feeling better again. Mr. Carter's face grew serious. He pulled his hands from his pockets and he took a step toward me. Listen, no fooling around. Don't you be talking like that anymore. You're going to get yourself into a heap more trouble than you're already in. All right, I said. All right, what? I won't talk about it anymore. Talk about what? Talk about busting out. Mr. Carter's trying to help him. He's like, don't talk about sneaking, trying to get out of there, because you're going to get in trouble. All right, that's the end of chapter 10. So think about it. Think about what he's going to be doing in this boys' home. Think about the boys that are in there. Is he going to meet some other boys? Is he going to like them? He's never been around kids his own age. He's only been around Pat and Mr. Abrascato. Is he going to find some friends? We'll see. Is he going to bust out? We'll see. See you next time.